Hello everyone, welcome to the Web Security Academy series, and in this video we'll be covering the username enumeration via response timing of Authentication Vulnerabilities Lab. So this lab is vulnerable to the username enumeration using its response timing. That means we need to particularly look into the response times, and they have provided one username and the password, and the list of usernames and the list of passwords are also provided to us. Now let us access this lab. So this is the web page. Now let me go to the my account section, where let me try the username that is being provided. And let me log in, and here I have logged in as a winner. Now let us see the same request in the HTTP history. Now this is the request that we have sent, and let me send it to the repeater. Now what repeater will help is to analyze the different requests, and then how for each request what is the response we are getting, because we need to check for the response timing as well. Okay, now this is the username and this is the password. Let me send it again, and the response timing I am getting is 183 milliseconds. Now let me try a different username, say test, and correct password 176, and suppose if both are wrong passwords, similarly 180. Now let me provide the correct username and a very long password. Let's see. Okay, so here I got a warning saying too many incorrect login attempts, please try after 30 minutes. That means there some sort of protection is enabled and our IP is getting blocked. So we need to find a bypass for that. So in order to bypass this IP blocking, what I can do, I can use a request header which is called X forwarded for. And the number. Now let's see. Can you guys see? After I use this X forwarded for, I'm not seeing this error anymore. But at the same time, if I use it, try to send it again, no. This time also no error. But on the fourth time, I'm getting this error. So that means for 3 consecutive failed logins, my IP is getting blocked. Now let us understand what is this X forwarded for header used for. So X forwarded for is usually used to obtain the IP address of the client when it is connected to the web server. So whenever the client is connecting to the web server, the request may travel to from the client to proxy server, and from the proxy server to probably the load balancer, and then finally to the web server. So that means whenever the web server needs to understand the IP address from where the actual request is originating from, it needs to have this X forwarded for header in the request. And this X forwarded for header looks something like this, where X forwarded for colon client 1, that means client 1 IP address, comma, followed by proxy server 1 and followed by proxy server 2. Now think of a case where the X forwarded for header is not used. Then what happens? So in those scenarios, the web server will not see the client IP address, that means client original IP address. It will only see the last IP address. That means in our scenario, the web server can see the load balancer IP address only. Now you may think what kind of IP address is being used. Now it can be a public IP address, or it can be private IP address, or it can be mix of both public and private. Now think of a scenario where the client is directly connected to the internet. So in those scenario, the public IP address will be used. But whereas it is a private network, you can consider it as your corporate office network, where the client and server and the proxy server, load balance, everything is sitting into the same private premises. So in that scenario, the private IP address will be used. And the third scenario comes when the request goes from the private network to the public cloud. Now, if this is clear to you, let's move to the request and response. Now here I have used X forwarded for 100. However, the server is not validating whether it's a valid IP address or not. So that is an issue from the server side as well. Now let us try to use different usernames and different passwords and see the response time. Now first let me use a wrong username, say test, and password test. Let me use this X forwarded for. I'll use some other value, say 700. And the moment I send this request, I am getting a response time of 195 millisecond. But the moment I give a right password and the wrong password, so I'm getting a response time of 200 millisecond. Now what if I use a very lengthy password? And send this request. Now here can you see, the moment I used a lengthy password, my response time is 470 milliseconds, which is significantly more compared to the last few response that we are getting. Now let us try the same thing for a wrong username. Now again, the response time that you are getting is 186 milliseconds. That means whenever I am using a wrong username, the web server is not checking for the passwords, and that's how I am getting a smaller millisecond response. But whenever I am providing a correct username and wrong password, wrong lengthy password, my response time is more. That means the application initially checked my username and then validated the password. And the reason that is taking longer time, it is because the application is using some sort of hashing algorithm to store and verify the password. And there are different kinds of hashing algorithm such as bcrypt, which exhibit time complexity that scales with the input size. That means the longer the password that you give, the longer time it will take to process it. Now can you see there is a loophole here. So whenever I am providing a wrong username and a lengthy password, the application response time is smaller. But whenever I am providing a correct username and again a lengthy password, the application response time is longer. That means the application is taking much more time to validate the password. And by taking the advantage of this loophole, we will try to enumerate the username in this case. Now let us send this request to the intruder. So in the intruder, add this username. We will try to use much more longer password so that we can see the time difference. And also we need to use different values for X forwarded for option. And to do so, we will be using the pitchfork attack type. Now, how does pitchfork works? Let us see with an example. A pitchfork attack uses the first payload from the each payload set. That means, assume that we have a two different payload set 1 and set 2, and these are the different payloads that we have, A, B, C, D and Q, W, E, R. And while using a pitchfork attack, it will send 4 different requests. If pitchfork attack is clear to you, let's move to the bub suite. Let me add this and let me go to the payload. Now first payload set, let me use a number and it can start from say 800 to 900 with the steps of 1. And for payload set 2, we need to use the usernames that has been provided to us. So these are the usernames. And let's start this attack. Now to observe the response time, go to the column select response received and response completed. And if you sort it out, this value. Now here you can see for this request number 70, where the payload is Apollo, the response time is much more, 1244, compared to the other responses. That means in this scenario, when I have used username as a root, the server didn't check for the password as the root is an invalid username. But whereas the moment I have used the username as an Apollo, the server checked for the password, and that is why the response time is more, which indicates that the Apollo is a valid username. So let me copy this username and now let us try to do the brute force attack on the password field. I'll go to the position. Now we have this username Apollo. Now instead of using the long password, I'll simply use test and add it. The attack type remains same, pitchfork. And for the payload position, earlier we have started from 800 to 900. So that means 800 to 900, all these IPs has already been used. Now let us start from say 920 to 1020. And in the payload set 2, let us use the passwords that has been provided to us. And start this attack. Now here we are looking for a 302 status code. Now as you can see, for the request number 29, the status code is 302, which indicates that the requested URL is in a different location. And you can see the location from here. Now let me copy this payload set. Copy and try to log in. That means the application server is still blocking my IP. Now, so what I will do, this is my username and the password. I'll turn on the intercept and login. Forward. Now here I have to use the X forwarded for header. And the value that I'm going to use is 300. Forward it. Forward. See, can you see? I have logged into as an Apple account and it says congratulations, solved the lab. So thank you for watching this video and we'll see you in the next one.